Oh no, thank you very much, Tash and Jan. So yeah, and thank you very much for asking me to speak on this event as well, because I've never done anything like this before. And I do feel that craftivism is a really important thing that so many people can get involved in. And also, I'd like to say that even though it is about kind of creating, beautiful pieces, which is a subjective thing anyway, isn't it? But of work, it's also it's not about creating anything too perfect either, because it's the intention behind the craft. So I feel like it's something that's very universal and accessible for anyone, and I guess it's any type of handicraft. So if you like doing embroidery or cross stitch, you can kind of use it in a way that works best for you, really. The kind of person that I tend to find that I get more kind of support from, or that I tend to follow, is Sarah Corbett, who's written this book I'll show you here. It's called The Craftivist Collective. She formed some years ago, and her kind of take on craftivism is kind of it being the art of gentle protest. So it's trying to encourage people to question things, to challenge things, but in a kind of gentle way. So it's not kind of confronting people too harshly or too strongly. It's not being aggressive or trying to polarize people. It's trying to draw people in a gentle way and trying to encourage discussion or conversation. And it's also a kind of way of giving a sense of well-being to the crafter too, I think, which is something I'll talk about in a bit. But I think that's a really important part of being a craftivist and craftivism. It's about how different issues that are going on in the world affect us all, and affect the craft themselves, and actually doing the craft and thinking about the things you're stitching and why you're stitching them can kind of help you process the issue or the causes that you're doing it for. But I'll come on to that a bit later on. But I thought, because obviously there's a few different pictures that again coming on the slides at the moment, going through the different ones that I've been making recently. One of them was a quote by Jo Cox, and that was one of the first ones I did, and it was when I was working at a school in Longsight in Manchester, and the head teacher and myself wanted to organise an event for the Great Get Together. It was the year after Jo Cox's death, and we thought that kind of doing different bits of handicraft for the staff and the local community and the children could all get involved and make a patchwork, really, of different ideas that came together. So that's what that one was for. And again, it was sort of a way of me kind of processing those events myself, and the importance of, everyone kind of coming together, no matter, any differences. We all have so much more in common than what sets us apart. And just, it'd be nice actually if I could have a picture of the entire display, because that was what was part of it. It was part of a big patchwork of different other contributions as well. And then kind of more recently, I've been doing stitching as part of the Diversity is Beautiful campaign for Stand Up to Racism. And that came about by kind of joining in with a conversation with Jill Scott, who's part of this, and Mira Senior, and I just felt really inspired by the work that they were doing. Kind of they were doing lots of different things and collating a list of books, diverse books for local primary schools to help them kind of bring more diversity in children's literature across the ages and the years. And I thought it was something that I could try and do to kind of raise awareness in a sort of gentle way. It also came about, I think, through after the Black Lives Matter movement. And I know a lot of people share this kind of response to it, that I just felt really powerless. And like a lot of causes actually and issues that we kind of faced in the world, I think when you feel very strongly about something, but you also feel that sense of complete powerlessness, really, of knowing what to do about it. And we can go on marches and we can protest and we can do different things and talk about it, but sometimes you just feel that there's not enough you can do. And I find that for me, doing bits of craftivism helps me process those things. And even though they're not huge things, I feel like they're kind of trying to make some sort of positive difference without being confrontational without telling someone what they should be thinking, but I guess just trying to maybe plant some seeds or questioning within ourselves what our own biases are and what we might be thinking. And with doing this Diversity is Beautiful campaign and stitching these different pieces, the intention was to find quotes about diversity and quotes that were intentionally from people, Black people and people of colour as well, to represent kind of a different group of people within an area that's predominantly very white as well, in the Peak District, and along a path where many people have been walking, especially in the past year. I think there's been a different relationship with the Set Valley Trail, which is where kind of this trail of craftivist pieces have been put. And I think the fact that they were sort of hung on trees as well, that was intention to feel that the tree's strength was also kind of giving strength to the quote, but in a soft way. I think that kind of putting little quotes on places where people are passing by, it kind of feels not too intrusive, but I feel like the passerbys, their gaze is softened anyway by being in that place, and therefore when they see the quote and see it's quite inviting, it's on some nice fabric, it looks kind of attractive, it kind of draws you in, and you can kind of then start to question things yourself in your own time and your own space. Something that I felt was quite positive about these quotes on the trail was when I noticed children seeing them and children bringing their families to look at them, and then obviously I wasn't listening into the conversations, but assuming that therefore it could have been a catalyst for conversations to begin about who that particular person was that wrote the quote, what do they stand for, what does that quote mean, and just kind of trying to kind of encourage those sorts of discussions really. So that was the kind of idea about that particular bit of craftivism. John mentioned about the Canary Craftivist campaign. That was something that was set up by Sarah Corbett of the Craftivist Collective, who I mentioned earlier. And the idea was to kind of either for people to do it on their own or to kind of form a flock of Canary Craftivists and to choose a place of interest. We actually chose Mamtor because we thought that it was a place where many people go walking, and visually it would be quite well noticed really, because there aren't many trees around. So our yellow kind of display would be quite well noticed. And the idea was for us to kind of just spend that time together and go up with our handmade canaries to send a message to the local MP, Robert Largan, that we wanted him to make sure that that to put out before he goes to the COP26, that this needs to be at the top of their priority list, and that it matters to people, and people really want it to be up there. But the way of doing it, I guess, was in a kind of gentle way, and we also wrote handwritten letters while we sent in the canaries as well. We're still kind of waiting for responses. I think someone's had a reply, but I don't think other people have yet. And it also went into the local Books and Advertiser as well. But another thing that was part of that craftivist project was doing it together, and I think that that's a really important part of, well, it can be a really important part of craftivism, because the shared experience of doing something for a cause that you kind of mutually feel very strongly about, it can help the well-being of the individuals within that group, because as I was saying before, because of all these different big issues and causes that are kind of we're faced with in the world right now, it can feel you can feel very disillusioned, and you can feel very powerless and not sure how you can help. And you can feel quite alone, I think, as well, if you're not sure how you can share different things with, or you want to have discussions about these things. And I think that having the craft as a kind of tool to channel your energy about these things, but doing it together, can be really empowering. And also you can inspire creativity from each other as well. you know, because I guess we can all get stuck in creativity too, can't we? So doing it as a group can be really helpful in that way. So that was a really good campaign to be part of. Oh, and actually now that this one's come up as well, sorry, this actually wasn't really part of the kind of project as such, but it was something I stitched recently because I keep on hearing people saying I can't sing, or I'm not a singer. And it's something that I feel quite strongly that we all have a right to be able to sing. And it doesn't mean that we have to be perfect singers or that we have, you know, amazing musicians, but we all have a right to make music and to use our voices. But I feel that culturally, maybe it's something that we kind of feel we have to be amazing at and able to do in order to do it. I run a natural voice sort of singing group, and I feel that it's trying to enable people to sing without being afraid of what they sound like or that they feel they shouldn't. So I felt that when I've heard people saying, "Oh, I can't sing," or I shouldn't sing, I should only sing in my own space, it made me want to stitch this quote by Rumi, because I felt that, well, actually everyone deserves to, has the right to sing and to be heard, really. So that was why that one was done and placed on a tree in the orchard. And actually, something else that I'll just mention is that when these different things have been hung up, I guess it's the kind of not knowing what will happen to them. So with the quotes on the Set Valley Trail, my intention was to hang them up in the summer and take them down kind of as autumn began and the trees were shedding their leaves. And actually quite a few of them were taken down before then. I think maybe only 3 of them were left, which now have gone to the Diversity's Beautiful campaign. But I guess it's also that thing that you don't really know what will happen with them. And I'm assuming and I'm hoping that they were taken down and people have just kept them because they liked them, hopefully. But I guess you never know. And it's that kind of thing that you make something and you leave it there, and you see what happens to it. And I guess the other part of that is that you kind of want to use things that are kind to the earth as well, or using things that you already have, or reusing and recycling, that kind of thing as well. I won't go on for too much longer, but what I thought I'd do is just share with you something from Sarah's book. She's written like a manifesto for a Craftivist manifesto, it's called. And the very last thing she puts, make the change you wish to see. And she puts, if we want our world to be more beautiful, kind and just, then let's make our activism beautiful, kind and just. So pick up your needle and thread and join us in crafting. Together we'll change our world one stitch at a time. It's quite nice. So I think that's it really. But I'd love to know if anyone else has been doing any craftivism, because there's so many different projects happening, like the Loving Earth project and the Hope for Coats project as well. And if anyone wants to kind of collaborate and do anything together, it'd be really nice to know for the local people who do. So thank you very much for listening.
Lovely. Just in saying thank you for that. I found that really inspiring and really lovely, the idea of doing things gently, not having to do them perfectly, and just putting them out into the world. It's really quite powerful, even though, you know, it's not banging, crashing powerful. It's that gentle letting things into the world powerful. So thank you. I really enjoyed that. Have we got any questions that have come up?
No,
yeah,
no, just looking in the chat, Jan,
mm-hmm.
There's no questions as such. People are making comments, you know, so inspiring. Thank you for the gentle activism. There is a question attached to that. Is it important, Vic, for you to use environmentally good materials?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it is really important. And it's something that I'm trying to work on and be a bit more mindful about, really. I guess the materials I've kind of been using are things that I've already had, because I guess over years I've just collected bits and pieces, you know, bits of, especially those cross stitch, what do you call it, like tapestry kind of things, which is what I did the cross stitch on, which I've had for a long time. But I think that if I was sourcing stuff, I'd be kind of more conscious about where I was getting things from. And so that's definitely something. But I guess the things I've been using are things that I've already had, or scraps of material that were kind of often old dress or different things like that. Yeah, but no, I think it is really important to know where things have come from, absolutely, or to reuse and recycle them.
Thanks, Vic. There's another question here, Vic. Did you always stitch, or was it something you took up in response to the Craftivist movement?
I've always stitched. I've found I've just done it since I was very young, really. Always been stitching or crocheting or crafting of some sort. Yeah, I think it's something that I find very good for my own well-being, making things and being creative, whether it's, you know, using needle and thread or glue and sticking bits of paper together. Yeah, that is part of my well-being makeup, I think.
I can testify to that, really, because Mira and I have been doing trying to do bits of craftivism, but Vic is so fast that, you know, she'll sort of say, I'll do you something for tomorrow, and she'll have like 3 or 4 little quotes for us, and we're still struggling on one. So, you know, it's something that I think I'd like to learn to be able to do it better, so I can do it a bit quicker, because it took me forever to write something very short. So I suppose practice makes not perfect, because you don't like the word perfect, but it does, you know, the more you practice, the better you get at it, I guess.
Yeah, but I suppose it's also about the process too, because and actually something that Sarah Corbett says is, in a way, you want to be the tortoise, you want to be slow when you're doing it, so you're really thinking about what you're stitching. So whether even if you're a quick sewer or not, you kind of want to make sure that you're doing it at a slow pace, so you're taking in the words and thinking about what you're doing. So in a way, Jill, I don't think you need to speed up. Really. Stay slow. No. Be the tortoise.
No, we've got a question from Helen here, which could potentially be really exciting. Helen is saying, do you have any large group projects you would like to happen? So, I mean, we've often spoken about sort of group projects, but have you got something in particular, Vic, in mind? Large group projects?
I don't actually, not off the top of my head, not large group. So part of me is kind of feels, this might be not linked into what you were thinking, Helen, but I really want to try and work with, do some different things with children, actually, because I feel children will have so many ideas on ways to use craftivism, and it's just a way of kind of working with that generation as well, really trying to encourage ways of thinking about certain issues. So that's definitely something that's been on my mind. But in terms of other big projects, I've not really thought of starting a big one myself. I suppose ones that apart from the Diversity is Beautiful one, which I did with Mira and Jill, the other ones were part of the Craftivist collective campaign. So they were sort of ones I've linked with her, really. Have you been thinking of one, Helen, by any chance?
Hello. I've got wet hair, so I'm not going to put the video on. I saw something lovely at the Quaker Place in Dursley that was talking about cherish the earth in relation to COP26. COP21. And yeah, it was a large embroidery outside outside. Yeah, it's really nice. And I thought that what a lovely idea. It would be great to do something like that. And I love the word cherish as well.
Sounds beautiful. There's a big project called the Loving Earth Project, and I know it's set up by a Quaker meeting house, actually, and I'm wondering whether that's linked with it, because it's people doing big panels before COP26. So I wonder if it's part of that, possibly.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah.
I think Swan here says racism, climate change. What next? So it's like throwing down the gauntlet here, isn't it? So that's something for us to think about. Apparently Anne has got a hand up in Zoom. I think Anne wants to ask a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, really, just to say thank you very much. Your pieces are really inspiring, and as a very keen crafter myself, I can see how much work's gone into them. I think your stitching of the letters, I just can't get writing like that in my sewing. But what I really wanted to say was that I'm amazed that you can put your pieces out in the world not knowing what's going to happen to them. I would find very hard to let them go. And I think it's very generous.
Mm.
Oh, thank you. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. When you've spent time with something as well, you feel like it's become a little part of you, hasn't it? But I suppose that's also part of the process of, because it's to do with the issue that you're channeling your stuff into the craft, and then hanging it up is part of that process too. And it's almost like the letting go a bit. I think helps.
Yes.
When you've got all this stuff that you're tangled up with, all these issues. So I think it is part of it, definitely, the kind of letting it go.
Alison, do you want to, Alison has put something in the chat. At some point, it would be lovely to do a project with High Peak Community Arts and arts and health projects. So, Alison, do you want to actually speak to that?
I was just saying it would be a lovely idea for we have an arts and health that focuses on people with mental distress. And I'm just thinking it would be a lovely project to do at some point, and maybe exploring mental well-being through the craft, and or exploring any issues really, because see whatever the participants wanted to explore. But it would be, I think it'd be really a lovely project to do.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be brilliant. Really good. And there's so many different, ways of using handicrafts that different people, whatever people wanted to do as well. It doesn't have to be just stitching. Yeah.
Could I just mention the project that I did a little tiny thing with? I think it's kind of closed to newcomers now, but there is an artist who sent out the name and a piece of fabric with a spoon sketched on it, and everybody get the same size of fabric and the same sketch of the medicine spoon. And she did all the Scottish, witches' name, not witches, women's name, women who were accused of witchcraft, and the English women as well. So obviously there are probably thousands in this big project, and she's going to stitch them all together. So the closing date was like October this year. So I think that's kind of something that she's getting ready now. So if you watch for her final piece on the medicine spoon memorial on Facebook, I think it's going to be quite impressive and heartbreaking. An awful lot of women were killed over 100 years or so, a couple of 100 years. Terrible time. So yeah, powerful art, I think it will be.
In a different way, that somehow made me think of the Names Project in the night, to commemorate people who died of AIDS, and that was like a project where people made 6 foot by 3 foot sort of textile pieces to commemorate somebody they knew who died of AIDS. That was a huge international project to commemorate people, and that was very powerful and very moving, I think.
Yeah. And there's a quilt as well. I don't know if any of you have seen that. There's a quilt that's made up of it's women and children really who died as a result of domestic violence, and that's incredibly moving and powerful. It's a little square for each person, and so they are really powerful, these pieces of work.
Yeah, I think power is one of the elements in this, isn't it? The power of the piece, and from what Vic's been saying, the power of the impact it has on the person who's doing it too. So definitely lots of things to think about and ideas to churn over there. Right, I think we're sort of finished questions now. There's nothing more coming up, is there? So perhaps now is the time to move on to our next speaker. It sort of fits in with our general timing. So our next speaker is Leah Thorne. And Leah is involved with Address, which is a campaign using retro and reworked clothes and poetry and film and subversive catwalk conversations, which sounds interesting, all done to raise awareness of the sort of devastating impact of fast fashion on the planet, on the climate, and also it's a way of helping us understand and acknowledge how women particularly are targeted and made vulnerable by fast fashion. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear and see the information that Leah's going to give to us. So I hope you're ready, Leah.
Got myself back on gallery, so I'm not looking at a big picture of me. Well, I think before I say anything about a dress, I just want to say that that was wonderful, Vic. I was getting pinker and pinker. I was getting more excited as you were talking. And in some ways, I'm just going to repeat what you said. And I was a bit worried. I was thinking, oh no, I'm just going to say the same as Vic. But actually, it's exciting because it shows these links between us and that we know what we're doing as women. And it makes me really upset how much craft used to be downplayed. It's only like women's stuff, you know, and you think about like African American women in slavery and how they would do that, how they would do their art through their craft. And in South America, women now are leaving pieces of embroidered work around to show what their lives are like. And I think it's really powerful. It was lovely to hear you talk. And so you're where you are in the country, and I'm on the southeast coast of England. And I love that there are threads between us. And the other thing that I really recognize is when you get a group of women together, how excited we can get and how we can build on each other's ideas. And all of a sudden you've got a whole movement. So I'll talk about my bit of what we're all doing. And I'll talk a bit about a dress and tell you how it came about. And then we'll have a look at a film, because really it's when you see the clothes, it's like looking at Vic's work. You actually get an idea rather than me try to explain it. And then I'll talk a bit about the different bits, the different strands to the project. So a dress started about 3 years ago. For ages before that, I'd been trying to get involved in climate justice work. I kept going to XR talks, and I came out of it, like Vic said, I felt so powerless. I just couldn't think what I could do. And being old, like I'm in my 70s now, I felt that I had a responsibility, you know, that whatever happened on my watch. And all of a sudden, you know, what's going to happen in the future? It's not just for my lifetime, it's sort of thinking ahead. But I couldn't think of what to do, because every time I went to these talks or I tried to watch something on the telly, the facts just wouldn't stay in my head. They just felt so horrific that I just couldn't, it didn't compute. And then one day I watched a program called Fashion's Dirty Secrets by Stacey Dooley. I don't think it's up anymore on like iPlayer, and then I started to watch other films like The True Cost. And I knew I'd found my way in, because my dad was a tailor. My granddad had been a tailor. I'd been brought up in the rag trade. And I've always loved clothes. I've always loved finding bargains in charity shops. I'm really good at it. In fact, you'll see some of the clothes that I found in charity shops in the film. And I realized that I could do something that I'd done with my last project, which was called Older Women Rock, which is about women in our 60s and 70s and talking about how sexism and old age oppression impacts us. I realized I could take what I did there, which was to put poetry onto clothes, and I could do the same around fast fashion and climate justice. And so the project really began to grow. I live in a town where there are loads of artists. It sounds a bit like New Mills, where there's so much skill around. And you've only got to kind of say to someone, do you know anyone who does embroidery? And before the day's out, you've got about 3 women calling you up. So the actual project, I call it a campaign now, because it's sort of grown from a small arts project. And so the three strands are really what Jan said. So the first one is to really make sure that people who wouldn't normally find out about fast fashion and climate crisis, just to tell them what's going on, not in a terribly scary way, not based on painful emotions, but how do you explain to people that what you go out and buy in Primark or New Look or any of the places on the high street or online, for you to buy that at that ridiculously low cost means that somewhere in the world or somewhere in the Midlands of England, there are predominantly women who are working for next to nothing in dangerous situations, often being threatened with abuse and harassment. And I wanted people to understand that, you know, that we go out and we might buy a t-shirt for £2, but that's not the real cost. And then I want people to understand the way that the fashion industry impacts us as women. So 80% of garment workers are female, and that's not a coincidence. It's low paid, undervalued work. So that when there's a big fashion disaster like the Rana Plaza, which you might have heard about, where over 1,000 garment workers died, 80% are going to be women. And I wanted people to understand that. I wanted people to understand that we're vulnerable as females to being sold stuff by the fashion industry, particularly young women, how they're targeted now more than ever through social media. And I also wanted, a very important part is to understand how women and girls are disproportionately affected by climate crisis, how being a caregiver as a woman, when the rivers turn blue and frothy because of the dye that's coming from the local factory, when that happens, how do you bathe your children safely? How do you give them water to drink? How far do you have to walk? You know, if you live in the global south near one of these factories, how far do you have to walk before you can get clean water? So I wanted all of these things sort of came together, and I just decided I wanted to write poetry about it because I'm a poet, but I wanted to put facts as well onto clothes. And I started to gather women around me, and between us, we've made some fabulous clothes. There's now about 30 pieces of clothing, and you'll see some of them in the film. And if there's time, I'll maybe talk through how a couple of the others were made, a couple of the newer pieces. I don't know if anyone wants me to say what fast fashion is. I was sort of assuming that women might know, but do you want me to say a sentence? Does anyone need me to say what fast fashion is? I can see some shaking heads. Okay. If anyone wants to put, a question in the chat, then actually maybe I should be looking at the chat so that I'm not just talking about things that interest me but no one else. Oh no. Okay. I came up with a name. I came up with the name Address. As a poet, I love working with words, and I realized that if you put dress, it was about garments, but it was also about address. You have to address this. We have to address this now. When you say it, it doesn't sound so good, but it looks really good when it's written. And I did a little bit of fundraising. The last couple of years, I haven't worked for money at all. We've just been, using materials that we found, and none of us get paid. But at the beginning, I did some fundraising, and I worked with a designer to make the logo. And I really liked the XR logo. I thought it was really strong, and I wanted something that would be recognizable. So it just says Address Women, Fashion and Eco Action. And where I live now in Folkestone, a lot of women have got these on their clothes. I've got about 3 pieces of clothing, and I've just stuck them on there. And they're great conversation starters when you're in the supermarket queue. And we sort of plastered the town really with posters with that logo on. So I was just going to say to Jane, that was the clue really that the film's coming up, Jane. And this is a film we made the summer before, not this summer just gone, but the summer before. And I'll talk a bit in a while about what a subversive catwalk is. Because of COVID, we had to do a socially distanced subversive catwalk. But what you're going to see is some of the clothing and some of the range of women who are modeling. So we're sort of hoping to subvert the whole fashion idea of catwalks and modeling. And yeah, I'd love to know what you think of the film. I'm very proud of it. I made it with a filmmaker that I work with a lot called Claire Unsworth. And I think she's really caught something. It was filmed on the Harbour Arm in Folkestone. And yeah, if you're ready, Jane, shall we watch it?
Fast, 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 fast. Fast, 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 fast. Fast fashion is cheap clothing. Fast from catwalk, fast to scrap. 11 million clothes a year fill land with crap. Fast fashion pollutes, spews toxic dyes, CO2, pesticides, releases more greenhouse gases than global shipping and flights combined. Fast fashion costs the earth. Fast fashion costs lost lives. Fast fashion is fashion to die for. It is sartorial ecocide. The fast fashion industry is one of the largest consumers of water on the planet. To produce 2 pairs of jeans will take as much water as each of us will drink in our lifetime, or another way of putting it, 1 pair of jeans takes 70 baths of water to make. And fast fashion pollutes water. On the bank of the Citarum River in Indonesia, there are about 400 garment factories, and each one is pumping out toxic chemicals and dyes every day. And the local people rely on that water for drinking and for bathing and for washing clothes. Plastic is killing our oceans. And though we might not know it, if we're wearing something like nylon or lycra or acrylic, we are actually wearing plastic. And when we wash these pieces of clothing, tiny particles of plastic come out, they get into the water supply and eventually into the seas and oceans. Microplastics have been found in things like salt and fish that gets eaten, and in 90% of bottled water. Burning clothes is designer fashion's hottest secret. Rather than reduce the cost of unsold clothes and risk their reputation of exclusivity, they incinerate them. Unwanted clothes in the UK join a global trade in second-hand clothes that get bought and sold around the world every year. These clothes go to Eastern Europe and to African countries, where it has a really negative effect on the local fashion industry, as well as needing to go into landfill, which means that chemicals and dyes contaminate water and earth. Fast fashion clothes have a deliberately limited lifespan, both in terms of being on trend and in terms of quality. It takes 12 years to recycle what fast fashion makes in 48 hours. But even before the clothes get to the shops, they've already caused tons of waste, which usually gets sent to landfill. This waistcoat is made with waste that comes from the production of t-shirts. This used to be a much-loved threadbare sweater. And this used to be plastic scourers. This used to be a pair of jeans. This used to be a duvet. And these. These used to be a man's shirt. Maybe a child like you made your clothes, because children have hands that are clever and small, and children don't have to be paid much at all. So at this very moment, instead of doing homework, a child somewhere in India is doing sewing work. And she works long, long hours, and she's tired, she's hungry, she's really hot, but she can't stop. It's the only choice she's got. Many fashion companies are moving production to Myanmar because the minimum wage there is significantly lower, and because it's legal for 14-year-olds to work for 4 hours a day, often for as little as 1p an hour. 80% of garment workers are women. A female Bangladeshi garment worker said, "Women can be made to dance like puppets, but men cannot be abused in the same way." When women fight back about low wages and sex-based violence in the workplace, they're often ignored, repressed, and in some cases they're violently attacked and killed. Women are often afraid to speak out because society can blame them. Marinelle, Vandana Shiva, Hindu, Sunita. Name our sisters. Sisters struggling to meet their families' needs. With each drought, each flood, their burdens increase. Name our sisters on the front line. Sisters fighting for their lives, fighting for sacred territory. Shalvi Sakshi, Winnie Asiti. Name Indigenous sisters who inhabit places where it's not only land that is pillaged and raped, where climate emergency equals instability and violence against women escalates. I would like to name our sisters who died in the Rana Plaza and other man-made disasters, but their names are erased. Name our sisters. 80% of those displaced by climate change who pay for survival with their bodies, the exploitation, the trafficking, the brutalization. Name our sisters who, when they fight back, are attacked and oppressed, protest met by online abuse and threat. Oladosu, Rihanna, Autumn, Brianna. Name our sisters, name our sisters, name our sisters' names, our sisters.
I'll just say a couple more things and then see if there are any questions, or maybe Vic, we could make some comparisons between our work, some of the things that are really similar. So these clothes, what we've been doing with them, we've been doing subversive catwalks now that we can meet up, and at the very end, I'll show you a little tiny clip of the last one we did. So the youngest model was 2 and the oldest was 73, I think. And it's really important to me that we come together as women and girls. It's very important to me that there are Black women and white women, and that we sort of honor our differences. And it's like Vic said, that it's important to be unified. It's important to come together around these issues. So we do subversive catwalks, and the clothes have been put into shop windows. I've made relationships with the barbers. The man that I bought my carpet off when I moved, he put something in the window. There's a shop called Coastal Carstairs, which has got the most rubbishy window. It's full of spanners and tools and ladders, and they took a very sparkly evening dress. So just putting them in the high street, not in the creative quarter where all the artists are, because that's a bit easy, but to really take it out and to get as close to Primark and New Look as we can get. And then about 3 weeks ago, we actually did take them onto the streets. It was such a joyous occasion. So there were 3 11-year-olds who wanted to come, and they've made these outrageous clothing about fire and water. And then some other women wore some of the clothes you saw. And we just walked around the streets, and it felt much better actually than doing something that was at a distance from people. And then some of the women have been doing demonstrations in shop windows, demonstrations of repairing skills or customizing skills. And what else have we been doing? Before the pandemic, we had clothes swaps, which were really successful. And given poverty at the moment, which seems to be just spiraling, it's going to be more important than ever that we can encourage people to swap clothes, especially children's clothes, because I think for a lot of women, they have to go to Primark if they're going to actually be able to clothe their children, if they don't want to go, if they still have stigma around charity shops. We've been working with the local charity shops who've been really helpful. They've given us shop windows as well. And we did recently, a stylist has moved down from London, and she did some fashion makeovers, style makeovers in the cancer research charity shop. So we've just tried to think of as many things as possible. And yeah, I think, and the only other thing I'll say, and then I will stop because that's nearly my time, I think, is that everything we're talking about, I want to do it, I don't use the word gentle, but I want to do it in a way that's really very open-hearted and isn't playing on people's fears and anger. I mean, but then you have to also acknowledge that some of these things are shocking that we're talking about. And what do you do with those feelings? Because you have to have a way of expressing them. So I've been setting up listening exchanges where we meet together in pairs, and we meet sometimes in a big group, sometimes just two of us, and we take an issue and we just talk about what it means to us and the feelings that come up for us. So like, I know Sue, for example, if Sue and I were going to do it, if we have half an hour together, for a quarter of an hour, I would talk. It's not going to be like a conversation, but I would talk about what this means to me as an older woman, say, and how sad I feel at the thought of what's happening in this very moment in garment factories in the global south. I might talk about my relationship to clothing and how, when I feel bad, I go around the charity shops. I don't go around Primark, but I still look for something to make me feel better. You know, the feelings are there, and we have to acknowledge them. It's not just about teaching each other sewing skills. You have to also be able to talk about what you've internalized as a woman, all the life you've lived and how you felt about your body and about clothes and appearance and all of this. And it's been lovely doing this with younger women, listening to how hard it is for them, being so targeted because of their appearance, and then them listening to me talk about what it's like as an older woman to be relieved that I'm not on show anymore. People don't wolf whistle me. I don't get that attention. And it feels like such freedom. But on the other hand, I'm completely invisible. People bump into me. People can't hear what I'm saying because I've got grey hair. And we have to learn to talk to each other about this. And that's a big part of the project as well. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I'm going to shut up now because, yeah. I'm not used to being listened to for so long about this. It's exciting to talk about, but I'll stop and I'll see what you want to say, or if you've got any questions or comments.
Do you want to just show the clip of the fashion show?
Sorry, I forgot it. Yes, I just
would really love just to finish off with that, and people can think about questions they might want to ask.
It's just a tiny clip of the finale of the last catwalk we did.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that was really rubbish quality. It's normally quite small, so you couldn't maybe see very clearly, but you get a sense just of the joy of being together.
Wow, thank you, Leah. That was another amazing amount of information and emotion and so on. Again, full of some of that stuff of gentleness and caring and feeling passionate, but putting it through in kind of loving ways. So yeah, I think that's been great for the course of this evening. Has anybody got any questions?
There's just looking at the chat, Jan and Leah, there's a lot of, you know, kind of words like powerful, moving, beautiful, inspiring, creative. Those have been coming up, and I was close to tears actually in a lot of that. I mean, it was just so hard hitting away. It's gentle, but it's hard hitting. We've got a comment here. I think it's from Kate at Wise Heart and Wild. She's saying, I would love to do a window display in New Mills. Thank you for your film. And everyone's saying thank you, obviously. I've got just a quick question myself, if I may, because I would say that the stitching on the clothes a lot of it was done by machine, wasn't it? Or was it?
It varied, you know, because there's so many different women who did different bits of the work, and I'm just trying to think. You're right, actually. Probably, I think there's maybe just a couple of pieces where it was actually embroidered by hand, but mostly there's different techniques. And of course, it's not all embroidery as well. Some of it was sticking and stuff, because there are a few fashion designers and textile artists and pattern cutters who made those clothes, but there are also a lot of local women who just love fabrics. And you know, and so that's what's nice as well, is some of it is very professionally done. I like what Vic said about it doesn't have to be perfect, and some of it is just really done with such love, and to the extent that women could do it, you know. And I think that's what's so nice. But each woman, I gave them a piece of clothing, and they chose which pieces they wanted, and then we talked about what issue would work well on it. So if I can just show you one example. Just see, it isn't in the film. So this was Caroline, who says she just, you know, she just fiddles around, and she does not fiddle around. She's brilliant. But I gave her this really sludgy, all-in-one thing, like with like that, and she cut it about and cut arms off and changed things around. And she decided we thought this would be good to talk about landfill and how many trucks per second, you know, are trundling off and putting this stuff into the earth. And so she's done this amazing piece of work where she's actually created mushrooms. She's felted mushrooms, and the whole thing is fun, but it's also really very hard hitting, you know, just to actually demonstrate what goes on, how things are put into the earth. So each woman has really taken an issue and sort of made it her own, you know, and learnt new skills as well through doing it.
There's a nice message here, Leah. You've put so much heart and work into this campaign, and it looks so professional, but also accessible. It's really extraordinary, and I hope you are very proud.
Yeah, that's a lovely comment. I'm sure you know what it's like, where you just know that it's not enough. So it's always the balance between being so proud of what we've pulled off, what I've pulled off, but what we've pulled off with no money and, you know, hardly any resource. But really, there's so much work that's needed. And I always feel like, oh, I'm only doing it in Folkestone. You know, it has to be bigger, but actually there's enough work to do in the small towns we live in. That maybe that's what we have to do. You have to change the culture in one town. The film is available, and I see that Sue's put the link in, and that's been shown. People have been watching it online, but also it's it's in international film festivals, which is great because it's been taken, you know, in the film world as well, because it's a very beautiful film, I think. But everything else has been very close to home, you know, and so I am proud of it. But how do we really scale this up? And how do we also know that it's enough, you know, that every tree that Vic puts a message on, that is enough? And also it's not, you know, we have to have every tree in the world with a message on it. So how do you get that balance? And when do we feel pleased with ourselves and when do we not? You know, when do we just keep going? So, and I like the fact that there's so much, I mean, there's so much love in the project, both in what Vic did actually and in Address. You can feel it's kind of tangible that it's been done with love.
Yeah, I think this evening's just been a brilliant evening, because I think we really have hit that point of some amazing things that are going on, amazing things that are happening, women-centered things that are happening. But as Liz just said, also we all feel we're not doing enough, but it's so good to have time together like this and remind ourselves that we've got each other's support, and any little thing any of us can do adds to that, you know, the pot of things that are being done. So yeah, I think the two of you have spoken about different projects, but they've got the same heart and the same love and the same care within them and the same inclusivity, you know. So if you can only do a tiny little bit of embroidery, or you can only stick, you know, cut out pieces onto something else, it doesn't matter. You can still do something, and I think that's been a brilliant message that's come across tonight. Yeah, really good. Yeah, wonderful evening, I think. Does anybody want to open up their mic and make any further comments or ask any more questions?
Shall we switch off the recording and then have a quick of a cameras on and chat?
Yeah, that would be really nice.